Hello, my name is Tom Doyal. I've written a cycle of stories titled Mambo Panties and Other Stories of Halsey County, Texas, and I want to read some of those stories for you now. Some of the stories are funny, some sad, and some just peculiar, and they're all written in that twangy, drawling, colorful speech I heard in my childhood. I hope you enjoy them. I came to Austin in 1962 to attend the university. I grew up in a small farm ranch community south of San Antonio, about 30 miles. And I'm the first member of my family to have a high school diploma, the first to attend college, the first to go to law school and become a lawyer, the first generation of my family on either side who never worked as a tenant farmer.
You made it.
I'm trash.
You also must be the first member of your family to be an openly gay activist.
Yes. The first year I was in school, I was on scholastic probation each term. Then I dropped out and joined the Army for 4 years. And when I came back, I had matured enough that I was on the dean's list every term. I just figured out sort of how the world worked and got enough separation from my family and enough knowledge about the world to figure out how to navigate.
Did that include being gay?
No. They came even much later. I think I was so caught up in the quest to become the best little boy in the world, and you can't be the best little boy in the world if you're a faggot. So I didn't even get to that till later.
But most faggots do struggle to be the best little boy in the
Oh
world.
yes. That's a common thing.
Mhm.
I married a woman when I was in my early 20s. Who was a very nice person, very smart. We were married 5 years. I married a woman a second time, and we were married 5 years. And the marriages weren't fake. I liked being married. And unlike some gay men, I enjoyed the sex. But I am gay.
And this is in the 60s, early 70s?
I married the first time in '68. I married the second time in '78,
So when did you come out as gay?
probably '83.
You want to tell us about that? Is there a story?
AIDS had started to show up on the coasts, East Coast and West Coast, and I knew I couldn't live anymore the way I had, which I was a closet queen,
Having gay sex,
Yes.
but not.
and not acknowledging that to myself or anybody else, really. For example, I met Troy Stokes in Peace Park. Troy was important because he started a hotline out of I think of the University of Y. He started a gay hotline. So I don't know the story of that because I wasn't out and active, but there's a story there.
By the time I met you in '88, you were partners with the gay doctor in town.
Yes.
And had started the Liberty Books.
Yes.
And Liberty Press.
Yes.
How did you get from one place to the next?
Rather quickly.
I didn't come out, I was like Quaker Puffed Oats, shot from a gun. Just kaboom. I had some money because I was a successful corporate attorney, which I was kissing that goodbye, and I miss it occasionally, especially the money. But I saw that bookstore in San Francisco, and I thought, I could do this in Austin. I found the space and built it out and ordered fixtures from North Carolina, and I mean, first class all the way. We did the best we could to make it look right, and there was 18 feet of plate glass across the front. It was not painted black.
And next to the most popular restaurant in Austin.
Yeah.
Part of the gimmick of the Castle Hill Cafe was that they didn't have a waiting room inside, so people had to stand outside, which put them in front of our windows. So Liberty Books really became the face of the gay community.
Yes.
So you were not only started the bookstore, you also started Liberty Press,
Yes.
and were going to become a book publisher. Became a book publisher.
I put
with a
out
number of
9 books. I published 9 books.
How did you think of yourself as a literary figure to take that on as well as bookseller?
Hubris. I opened Liberty Books on April 11th, 1986. I had a big 8x12 carpet-covered bulletin board, because there was at that moment no gay newspaper. There was a statewide gay rag in the bars called Twit, This Week in Texas. I had meetings and notices of meetings and anything of community interest that people wanted to post.
And it really was the community center.
Right.
And
I was trying to think of the other books that I published. I published a couple of lesbian novels. They did all right. They did well.
A collection of short stories that had heat.
Gay
I had a
Gay
story.
Men's
in there.
Erotica from the American Southwest.
So tell us a little about Liberty Books and the opening. I remember you have a good story about the Christian minister who.
There was a minister, now deceased, who had a group called Citizens Against Pornography. His name was Mark Weaver. And he came into Liberty Books about a week before we opened, just pushed the door open and said, "Is this a gay bookstore?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'm going to close you down." Okay. But the name Liberty Books was chosen by a lawyer. I saw this coming a long way off. I knew this was coming. And he brought the Vice Squad from APD, a detective named Earl Long, big guy, 6'4" or 5", weighed 300 pounds, huge guy. I mean, I would crane. I was 6'2" in those days, and I would look up in his face. And one of the books that offended him most was Bayou Boy and Other Stories by Lars Einer.
Oh.
That had a Louisiana boy wearing a dog collar and shirtless on the cover. Published by Gay Sunshine Press in San Francisco. Winston Leyland, a former clergy, former Catholic clergy. When Earl Long came on the premises of the bookstore, he said to Weaver, who was with him, Mr. Weaver, you wait outside. And so Weaver couldn't come in the bookstore. And then Long talked to me, and I said, "Do you need to arrest me? I'd like to lock the cash register and lock the front door." And he said, "Oh no, I'm not going to arrest you. I'm going to do a report and submit it to a magistrate, and they'll decide if there needs to be anything done." I said, "Yes, sir." Because I had two younger brothers who were peace officers. I was not going to argue with a peace officer. And then Long said to me before he left the store, he went around and looked at everything. And so Long said to me before he left, "Why don't you have your attorney write him a letter and ban him from the store, and that a certified letter, and that way you can have him arrested for trespassing if he comes back home." So I did. Tom Doyal, attorney at law. Weaver called me and said, "Are you really an attorney?" I said, "Mr. Weaver, the letter speaks for itself." When we did open, he had pickets along the sidewalk leading into the parking area. Said, "Got AIDS yet? Gay."
But you remember part of the story of Mark Weaver was that he was what we would now call a bear.
Yes.
In gay terminology.
Yes.
And you made the joke that his picketing brought more publicity than having a dancing bear.
If he hadn't picketed the store, I would have had to hire a dancing bear. But the picketing got wide coverage in the local paper and in the weekly, the Chronicle, and every place that printed anything. Those were still important outlets in that day. As R.O. says, before the internet.
So I remember one of the at some point a few years in, you invited Kip and me to purchase the store from you because you were so stretched so thin. You were an attorney with the gay rights lobby.
Yes, I shared offices for a time with the Lesbian Gay Rights Lobby of Texas. It was right after Glenn Maxey had left the lobby and gone to serve in the legislature. Before Glenn ran for the legislature, he talked to two people before he ran for the legislature. Ann Richards and me.
Thank you.
That's-
I assume you told him too.
Yes. Well, I told him I didn't think he'd win. But that we would never get anywhere until we put our own people forward. And he did win, which surprised me. So at that moment, there were two faggots in town, Glenn Maxey and his deputy, me.
Somewhere in here, you become a defendant in suing the state of Texas
Yes.
over the
plaintiff.
2106.
I became a plaintiff. There were 5 plaintiffs, 2 from Dallas, 1 from Houston, and 2 from Austin. Me and Pat Kramer, the late Pat Kramer. And our lawyer was Patrick Weissman, who was a civil rights attorney. Not gay, but a really good guy and very, very smart, good litigator, and now deceased. And we won in the trial court. We won in the Court of Appeals.
What was the case?
Morales v. State of Texas.
The basis of the suit was that 2106 was personally
An unconstitutional invasion of privacy. That it was not constitutional under the Texas Constitution, because we'd already got an answer from the U.S. Constitution with a case out of Georgia, Bowers v. Hardwick, in '86. We got to the Texas Supreme Court. And then along party lines, the court had been drifting to the Republican side after years of being Democratic majority, and we lost. So we had the U.S. Supreme Court had spoken, and the Texas Supreme Court had spoken. Same issue. We had to wait 11 years for the case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court that finally struck down sodomy laws nationwide.
So you mentioned sodomy laws, so can I take us to another story?
Sure.
Which is that Doug Dyer, the creator of, or one of the creators of Esther's Follies, this kind of ongoing political comedy review in Austin, invited a group of gay activists to join in a musical review called I Pass for Straight.
I remember it.
And one of our big numbers was singing the text of the Texas Penal Code 2106 to the tune of Onward Christian Soul.
We meant to offend, and we did. And we did.
So, and you were one of the cast
Original
members of
cast,
2106.
yeah. I was.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you turn in your penal code and join me in singing the homosexual conduct law? A person commits an offense if she engages in deviant sexual intercourse with another person of the same sex. An offense under this section is a criminal misdemeanor. Criminal misdemeanor. Deviant sexual intercourse is defined as any contact between parts of the genitals of one person and the mouth or anus of another, or the penetration of the genitals or anus of another person with an object. All of you are criminals by 2106.
You sell at the bookstore to Toby and Kip. What do you do?
I moved to Seattle
Okay.
for 10 months. For no reason other than I was tired and just out of a relationship and broke and exhausted. And I had enough money, I thought, to live for 6 months. And I got 10 out of it.
Okay.
And I lived in a small apartment about 2 blocks from a public library and read 250 books. It was a lovely period of time. To work there, I would have to get certified.
Join the bar.
And I would have to take a bar prep course. I came back to Austin to get a job, find work, where I knew people to ask.
But then you'd sort of become the gay community attorney.
I did.
And wills. You did our will.
Yes. Lots of estate planning stuff. Closest a same-sex couple could get to marriage before the law changed was to create a set of documents that would set up what was essentially a faux marriage that you inherited from one another. You could make medical decisions for one another. You could make legal decisions for one another in certain circumstances. There was even a document called Appointment of Agent for Disposition of Bodily Remains.
Yeah. Well, so another whole side of you was the writer and storyteller. You have a wonderful voice about the storytelling and the CD, and Mahatma Gandhi was a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Uncle Norval remembers Gandhi. I'll tell you one goddamn thing. Mahatma Gandhi was a son of a bitch. You want your oral history, you turn that tape machine on and I'll give you some oral history. Sure, I saw the movie on television, that Gandhi movie. What a crock. During World War II, my Army unit was sent over there to try to get the goddamn Indian railroads back to running. The food was not fit to eat. Damn cows all over the place and not a decent steak to be had anywhere. Every once in a while, one of us would shoot some skinny old cow and cook it over a campfire. The Indians were more interested in fighting the British than whipping Tojo. They could tear up more rail in one day than we could lay in a week. They didn't give a plug nickel if it killed 50 train crew, as long as it pissed the limeys off. And all the time that little half-naked Gandhi was running around in a diaper making Life magazine think he was holier than any bleeding Catholic saint. I guess religion is the same everywhere, at least in some ways. My daddy used to say that many a man had been trudging along behind a mule and a plow in the blazing heat when he got called by God to go preach somewhere in the shade. Anyway, every now and then the British command would send over a case or two of potted meat that tasted like soap. I was hungry the whole time I was over there. Even the cafes that was supposed to be for the English served up some of the most peculiar stuff I had ever seen set on a table. I dreamed of a river of cream gravy. And when I came home, my mama stood at that old wood-burning stove for 4 solid days, cooking, trying to fill me up. Finally, she told Daddy to take me to town and buy me steaks until I couldn't eat no more. We'd get one rail line running and have to go back and fix the line we fixed the month before. The Mahatma was preaching peace and some of his followers was tearing up track nonstop. The most you could hope for about the food was that it didn't have maggots in it. The people were hostile little brown bastards and the weather was something else. I mean, I grew up in Texas and I know something about hot weather, but India was hotter than a 2-bit whore on nickel night. I like to have died from the heat. One old boy from Vermont or one of them places asked the chaplain where he would go if he got sent to military prison. When the chaplain told him San Francisco, he jumped up and slapped the living fire out of a major sitting next to him at the bar. Of course, a couple of military police beat the crap out of him. He had to come to work the next morning just like everybody else. No San Francisco for him or any of us. I tell you, it was hot. We had 10 old steam locomotives shipped over from the States. Typical Army deal. Had to nearly rebuild them from the ground up to put them into service. Whenever we got one of them to run on a few yards of track, a general would show up to have his picture made hanging off the cowcatcher, grinning and saluting the camera. So, you kind of get an idea how I formed my opinion of Gandhi. After I got home from the war, I married Hazel. and she finally told me that nobody wanted to hear my opinion of Mahatma Gandhi anymore. I knew she was right. She generally was right about things. She knew before the doctor told her that she couldn't have kids, and she knew when she was dying before her doctor told either one of us. So I kind of quit talking about Gandhi and the war. Every now and then I'd run into somebody and talk about it a little bit. One time they hired 6 of us welders to put up the new mill south of town, and one of those guys had fought in Europe. He told me about the Battle of Bastogne, and I told him about India. But mostly I just quit mentioning any of it. I'd hear other guys talking on the job about Adlai Stevenson, inflation, or Vietnam, and of course communism was real popular for a while. I even worked on a job that old man Vogel poured the foundation for, and one of his boys talked nonstop about movie stars. Somebody told me that boy later run off to Oklahoma to become a homosexual. And I can believe it because I met people from Oklahoma. But the point is, I quit talking about the war I knew about. I moved to this nursing home after I had a little stroke. They don't like you to call it a nursing home. They say it is a retirement village. That word village reminds me of Indian. I say this place is a nursing home. One afternoon right after I got here, a little brown man in a blue suit toured through the place. When I asked who he was, one of the nurses said, "That's Mr. Patel. He's thinking of buying this place." "Is he a Mexican?" I asked. I knew he didn't look like any of the Mexicans around here except for being brown, but I thought maybe he's from deep down in old Mexico or something. She didn't answer me. I had forgot her oldest girl married one of the Ortiz boys. She just walked back in the office and sat at the desk eating out of a big gold box of candy, which she really didn't need since her whole family runs to the fleshy side. Turns out Manjeet Patel did buy this place, and he owns 2 more. Also turned out he was from India. Well, I thought I might talk to him about India if the right chance came along. In the mornings, I like to sit out on the east porch in the sun and listen to Zeddy Thompson tell stories about her family. If she's making those stories up, she is a by-God genius. If there's true, she's had the saddest and funniest life of anybody I've ever met. Anyway, one morning, Zeddy was off getting her hair done, and I was sitting there by myself just kind of wondering how long I was going to live, and Patel comes walking by. Now, by then, I'd figured out a couple of things about him. For one, he's pretty good at his job. This place don't smell bad like it did when Pinky Willis owned it. Pinky's always been so damn tight his balls grind together when he walks. He acted like buying a quart of disinfectant would send him to the poorhouse. Now this place smells like some different kind of spice, something foreign but nice. First day I walked in here, I thought the whole place smelled like a beer joint outhouse on a hot summer afternoon, and Patel fixed all that. He was headed out to his car. When he passed me, he said, "Good morning, how is everything?" I knew he wouldn't slow down enough for me to work up to a real conversation. I just blurted it out. "Mahatma Gandhi was a son of a bitch." "What? Mahatma Gandhi was a son of a bitch?" He started laughing. He said, "My grandfather would agree with you if he were alive." Now that kind of surprised me. I hadn't even thought about somebody from India not liking Gandhi. I told Patel about the trains in India. He laughed again and he said, "You did good work. Did you know Gandhi was a lawyer?" I said, "Don't a little detail like that write you a whole damn book?" He was still laughing when he went to climb in his big car and take off. Now every time he sees me, he says, "What about that Gandhi?" "Son of a bitch," I answer, and he laughs. Sometimes we talk a little if Zeddy's not around. Manjeet is actually a pretty good old boy. He even got me to thinking about whether Gandhi had a good reason to be a son of a bitch, and even whether I should have been more of one in my life. I'm all talked out. You can shut that tape machine off. I believe I'm fixing to take a little nap right about now, but if you'll come back next Thursday, I'll tell you about Harry Truman.
So you're still working on your writing and a novel.
The novel is finished and needs to be rewritten. I've won second prize in the Austin short story competition twice. It sounds like a minor honor, but there's 600 or 800 entries every
Right.
year.
Yeah.
Austin's a writerly town, kind of closeted about it, but there are people out there. I was president of the Austin Writers League in 1999. The last year it was known as the Austin Writers League. It's now called the Writers League of Texas. Same organization. I became ill in late 99 and was ill for 18 years. I've had 3 heart surgeries, cancer, a stroke, a rare autoimmune disorder, atrial fibrillation, anemia, chronic kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, and those are the highlights.
And never AIDS.
No,
And yet you live.
I'm alive. I'm present today and alive, sort of. And grateful.
Well, as we've talked, more and more levels of your life unfold, some of which I didn't know about. You've led a remarkable life.
I'm entertained and astounded by it.
Mumbo Panties. My nephew Jeffrey, who is 4 years old, believes he can cause an earthquake by putting his finger up his nose. Mama says that's the kind of crap that comes from trying to raise kids in some place like California. Jeffrey's mother, my sister Doreen, told Mama over the telephone that the counselor recommended treatment for Jeffrey. Mama's view was that for once nature had cooperated in the impossible task of civilizing a child. Hellfire, she said. Going through life scared to pick his nose is not going to keep him out of law school. Why would you want to get him treated for it? Of course, Mama had given Doreen and her husband, Jimmy Dale, unshirted hell about everything since they moved off to California 3 years ago. She stood in the driveway bawling her eyes out the morning they got that loaded station wagon to head out. Don't call me for bus money home to Texas when you find out what it's really like out there. I've lived my whole life for you kids, and this is the thanks I get. Mama said, Doreen, live for yourself for a little while before it's too late. Doreen looked over at me. She knew she was throwing me to the lions, but she told me the night before, I've got to get the hell out of Mahler, Texas and away from Mama before I go completely crazy and eat my own children. You're a man at 18. You can make it on your own, but I don't have a prayer if I keep living in this same town with Joan Crawford's hick sister playing the role of my mama. Mama's crying had kind of quieted down to blubbering little sobs, and it seemed like she might be switching gears in the direction of throwing another hissy fit when Jimmy Dale gunned the engine and sprayed gravel pulling out of the driveway. Doreen and Jimmy Dale Hooper married when they were both sophomores in high school. Doreen and Mama were fighting like cats and dogs in those days. After Daddy died fumigating a grain elevator with cyanide, they really went at it. Doreen would go to the drive-in movies with Jimmy Dale on Friday night and not come home until Saturday afternoon. She quit even trying to make her lies sound believable. You can't stand there and tell me that it took 24 hours to fix a flat on a Ford pickup, Mama screamed. The next time I catch you lying to me that bad, I'm fixing to stomp a mud hole in your butt and walk it dry. Now get in your room and don't come out until I'm over wanting to kill you. It's no wonder I thought the word Mama was a law enforcement title, sort of like sheriff. For years, I thought people who called their female parent mother were either putting on airs or just trying to hide the ugly truth. Anyway, I was 5 years younger and trying to stay out of the line of fire. I heard Mama say to Lucille Kirk next door, "It's hard to believe Doreen's even kin to me. Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do with that girl. I've never seen a worse case of mambo panties." Well, my 11-year-old imagination just went right to work on those mambo panties. I thought they might be some kind of haunted underwear that took over your body and made you do a nasty hoochie cooch dance, something with a Latin rhythm. Not that I knew much about dancing because we were Baptist. The church youth director wanted to keep us from the sin of dancing in the cafeteria after football games, so he got the church to sponsor an alternative for all us Baptist kids. We had a hayride. All of us piled in the trailer of a flatbed truck, rolling around in about 20 busted bales of hay, some couples enjoying the occasion way more than the church had intended. The parents finally figured out what a failure their idea was when all the Catholic kids started trying to sign up for the hayride instead of the dance, and that ended the only brief advantage I ever experienced on account of being a Baptist. Anyway, the whole idea of mambo panties kind of scared me. Of course, the next year I turned 12 and started to want a pair, and the year after that I was trying to figure out which girls might be wearing them. The rest, as they say, is history. I don't remember having a single thought for about 6 or 8 years that wasn't some variation on the theme of mambo panties. That phrase became a little drumbeat in my life. Mambo panties, mambo panties. I guess I haven't matured so much as I've just gotten older. The first time Doreen and Jimmy Dale came back to visit at Christmas, Doreen set us all down in the living room and made a little speech. "It's not too late," she said. "We can relate to each other in different ways than we have in the past." "You're always going to be my daughter," said Mama. "That's how we're related." "Mama, I'm just saying I'm willing to stop being codependent if you are," said Doreen. Jimmy Dale was sitting there real quiet, studying his fingernails, and I realized he had already heard this stuff. "What in the hell does codependent mean?" asked Mama. Now, mind you, this question came from a woman who withheld our Christmas presents in 1972 until Doreen and I both finally caved in and promised to pray for Richard Nixon. Whenever I hear some story of international diplomacy using the word linked, I think of Mama. You know, like should human rights be linked to economic aid? Well, if those overpaid sons of bitches in the State Department knew my Mama, the United States would control the whole world. Of course, if Mama's case is any model, world domination might not be as satisfying as it sounds at first. Doreen's answer to Mama's question about codependent went on for quite a while, and the word relationships came up 10 or 20 times. When she finally stopped talking, Mama said, "Just because you live in California now don't mean you can come dragging back here putting on airs in the very house you were raised in." "Mama, I'm just trying to communicate," said Doreen. "Why can't we just have a conversation?" asked Mama. "Why do we have to communicate?" After Doreen's family meeting broke up and the hollering finally died down, I went to pick up my girlfriend Charlotte and brought her over to meet Doreen and Jimmy Dale. "How long have y'all been married?" Charlotte asked Jimmy Dale. "All my life," he said. "I didn't even get a period of self-abuse." "That period of your life is fixing to start right now if you don't put on a happy face," said Doreen sweetly. "Yes, ma'am," said Jimmy Dale, smiling. "Don't be vulgar," said Mama. "Yes, ma'am," said Jimmy Dale, still smiling at Doreen. Jeffrey and Jason were running through the house playing Warpath and whooping. Charlotte said she had to get back over to her folks because they always opened their presents on Christmas Eve. After I ran her back home, Jimmy Dale and I stood out in the carport and smoked a joint. It was a real clear night, but not too cold. "Jimmy Dale, I'm sorry about Mama picking on y'all all the time," I said. "It's not too bad since we moved out to California. Just every now and then when her and Doreen have been going at each other over the phone, I have to tiptoe around for a day or two. Really, Doreen has done a lot better in the last year. Nothing personal, old buddy, but I'm stockpiling confetti for that old woman's funeral." We were out there a long time just sitting on the tailgate of my truck and talking. I told him about mambo panties and he laughed. Jimmy Dale said, "Once I went camping with the Vogel brothers and we ate some mushrooms and it occurred to me that sex was really the best part of life and the only way to make everything else bearable was to think of it as foreplay. That idea's got me through some bad shit, and I'm not just talking about your mama." I kind of like that idea, I said. What did Troy Vogel think about it? I asked because I hear his idea of foreplay kind of resembles assault. He told me later that he didn't think much of anything I said that night because I was so messed up I was talking like Gomer Pyle, said Jimmy Dale. People miss out on some good stuff just because the person talking doesn't sound like Walter Cronkite, I said. I think over time I've just decided to submit to the eternal rhythm of mambo panties. And I'm glad. You won't ever catch me going on about the road not taken. You gonna marry Charlotte? Jimmy Dale asked. I think so. Being married's okay. Doreen and I never wanted anything else, and we couldn't believe what a wall-eyed fit your mama pitched. Well, Mama is a hard case. I think she resented the idea of sex about as much as anybody I've ever seen. It makes me wonder how she was able to have 2 kids, I said. Let's go look in on the boys. Those little devils are real cute when they're asleep. Don't worry about me and Doreen. We're going to survive this visit just like everything else, said Jim Dale. How do you suppose Mama ever thought of a thing like mambo panties, I asked. Maybe she was alive once, said Jim Dale. I hope so, I said, and we went in the house. When we stepped into the kitchen, Mama turned from the stove and said, Where the hell have you 2 been? Just outside remembering the good times, said Jimmy Dale. If I had my way, you would have had fewer good times, Mr. Hooper, said Mama, shaking a long-handled wooden spoon at Jimmy Dale. I understand that, Mother. That must have been a hard time for you, Jimmy Dale said gently. Even a strong woman can't hold back the tide by hollering at the ocean, Mother. I sucked in a quick breath and waited for the explosion, but everything was real quiet. When I looked at Mama, I saw her standing motionless in the middle of the kitchen floor, holding that wooden spoon like a queen's scepter, tears running down her face. Y'all going to bed, she said quietly. Yes, ma'am, said Jimmy Dale. And we left Mama standing in the yellow light of the kitchen, crying without a sound.